There are some questions that I get over and over again when it comes to the decision about when to put the signatures into your junk journal cover. How do you do that? Do you decorate every single page first, and do you decorate every signature first and then make the cover and put everything into the cover? Or is there perhaps a point where you say, I have some decoration on my pages already, and I have the feeling that I want to put those signatures into a cover now, but how to decide that and how to find this point where you say, okay, now I'm ready to make the cover and put the signatures into that cover. That's what I want to try to answer today with this video. Hi, this is Luise Heinzel. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another episode of my little series about how to make a junk journal from scratch. If you have missed the other episodes of this little series, you can find a playlist linked below this video so that you can watch everything from start to finish if you want, so that you can get an imagination about, how we came to this stage of the project. And to answer this question, for me, to be honest, it's not so easy because I do that a little different every single time I make a journal. But there are some homemade rules or something, some rules that I made for myself to decide when is the point where I can take my signatures and then make the cover and put the signatures into the cover. And one big thing is, if you have a sewing machine, then you can think about, do I want to sew something onto my pages or am I done with sewing? So that is, for me, the most massive point, because imagine you have some pages and let's say, for example, this little thing, it's only an example, but let's say you want to you want to turn this into a pocket, or you want to have some decorative stitching around here. Then you would have to take this page to your sewing machine and sew around it. Yeah. So that means if this was already in the cover, that wouldn't be possible anymore. So I try to think about those spots where I want to add sewing, then I add that with my sewing machine. If you don't have a sewing machine, you don't have to think about that. But if you have one, then think about those places where you can only sew with, having the loose pages. And when I have decided that I have enough sewing here, then I can go to the next step and the next thoughts. Perhaps you are new to junk journaling, or perhaps you don't have an idea if you want to sew something else here. Then you can also do a little trick and you can make some faux stitching. For example, let's say this little thing here, which is a belly band, obviously. Let's say you have this in a loose condition in your stash and you want to add it to your page, but you want to have sewing. And you have already taken the signature and the signature is already bound into the journal. That is absolutely no problem. Just take the loose piece, go to your sewing machine, sew around here, and then just glue it down here and here with some glue. Then you have the sewing, but without the need of having the single and loose page under your sewing machine. I think I have done that here exactly, like that. Look, you can see the sewing here, but not here. Yeah, so that is, in my terms of junk journaling, a fake sewing because you can't see the sewing here. And sometimes it's even nicer when you can't see it here because perhaps you don't know already what is going to happen on this page here. And perhaps you can't have the sewing here because of some decoration that would look weird with sewing or something like that. So that is the first thing I like to think about. And then there's something that is really hard for me to explain. So in my case here, I have my sewing done. I don't want to sew more. And then I take this and I put it to my table like this so that I can imagine how it would feel if these signatures would be in a cover. My hands are imitating my journal cover now. And the next step is perhaps really weird because it's some kind of an emotional thing that has to do with your feelings. Yeah, so I take this whole thing and then I press it like this carefully, because your journal cover later on would not do something like this, like really extreme. Yeah, otherwise you would have made some mistakes. If your journal would look like this, then it would be too would have a spine which is too narrow. So it would probably be later somehow like this. And if you then do it like so, you can already feel if something is weird. For example, let's say you have, let's take something really fat. I have some pieces from my mood board here, which we made in the first episode of this series. So let's say you have something like this. This is really bulky. And let's say it's here on, let's put it here into the very back. Let's put it here. Let's say you have glued it down here, yeah? And you take this and you do something like this. And now this is not enough for what I want to demonstrate here. Let's say it's way more. So I will put some things in here so that you can see in the camera what I mean. But you can feel that with your hands as well. Yeah, so if you do it like so and you press this, you can feel with this hand that here there's something going wrong and that this is way too bulky. This could be, for example, a really bulky tag. This could be like a journaling card which went out too fat, which you then would probably take out and put into another spot in your journal. But that is what I like to do. I like to feel how this would feel if the cover was already there. And if this makes a good feeling, then you can make the cover in my eyes. Of course, this step is something that is like a personal trick that works for me, that it can happen that it doesn't work for you. And it is also something about experience. Yeah, I have made over 100 journals in my life, and I think I can say that, you know, when I did this for 100 or more journals, I could get the experience of this feeling. If you don't have that yet, then please don't freak your freak. Just go on and just, you know, try to decide, perhaps with your own methods, about when to put the signatures into the journal. Of course, you can also think about how much do I want to write in the journal later. There can be pages which are already like fully embellished and where you think I don't want to write here. You could have some journaling cards or tags or something like that. But it can also be that you are not this type of junk journal crafter which likes, who likes this like massive embellishing of the pages. Perhaps you want to have some kind of a notebook or something, or a diary where you later on want to add your photos and all of that stuff. And in this stage, you need a lot of plain space. That can also be. So if you are happy with what you have on the pages, then take this whole stuff and put it into the cover. And that is exactly what I want to do today. And I have to say, perhaps in this video and perhaps also in the following videos, you will see me doing strange things with strange tools, because I have a little problem, which is actually a relatively big problem. I want to use this paper bag here for making the cover, because this has the perfect size. How to decide that? I take one of my signatures. I know that every signature has the same height, so I can use one as a reference. And when I put this here, I can see that I have a little bit of space here and a little bit of space here, which is really good, so that then the cover later on can be slightly bigger on the top and the bottom, and also on the left and the right, but we will determine the width of this later. But for me, I have the main point why I chose this paper bag is that it already has the right measurements here height-wise, and that I don't have to cut anything here, because I have problems with cutting and everything else. When you have seen my last video, everything was normal, and in between of I mean, it's like, you know, when I make videos, my time and my the time for me is different than the time for you, not only because we are probably in different countries, but also because I film my videos in advance and then you see them. And when you see them, it's for me probably a few days or even weeks later than it is for you, because I have already produced those videos. And in this case, between the last video of this series and this video, there are 3 weeks. So that means I haven't been on my table here since 3 weeks, and that has a reason. Perhaps some of you have already heard some hints from the community because I couldn't keep this thing like, you know, a total secret. Otherwise I would have driven crazy. I tried to open this to make this paper bag longer. And the reason why I don't use a bone folder in this case, for example, is that I at the moment don't know where my bone folder is. You will see now some video footage about my current situation. This is my craft room at the moment. As you can see, everything is, or nearly everything is packed into boxes, and that's because I am going to move. So I will leave Austria and the campsite here, and I will move back to Germany, where I was born. Not to the city where I was born, but back to Germany. And I had some problems with my schedule of the move. There went some things not like planned. I had some, more or less big disasters to manage. Things that I couldn't see coming. And that is the reason why I had to unbox a lot of my stuff. And I had to search for the materials I want to use for making this for approximately 2 days or so. Of course, I have written to my boxes where, in which box is what, but not so accurate that I, for example, could find these paper bags in the first minutes. So I had to search for everything. And that also means that we use this strange thing here to measure today instead of a ruler. So please excuse these circumstances, but I thought I want to do this, and I want to continue this series for you because, you know, I imagined when I would when I would watch something like this series on YouTube, and then the person would say, "Ooh, I have to move, I don't have time to finish the series, there's going to be a break for like several weeks or so," that would drive me crazy, because I know that there are many people in the community, perhaps you as well, who craft along with me, and if then the series would stop and you couldn't craft further, that would drive me crazy, and I couldn't handle that. So you have to live with weird measuring tools here today, and some other weird things as well, but we will make the cover today together. It is really, if you could see everything around me here, you would say, what the heck is Louise doing there? But I try my best to finish this thing so that we can have fun together and have a journal in the end. Of course, I want to have this journal in my hands as well. So what are we going to do? We have a total of 5 signatures here, and I want to have 1 centimeter of space here. So meaning here's the cover, then there's 1 centimeter, 1 centimeter in between of each of the signatures, and 1 centimeter here, and then here's the next cover. So that means we need a width of the spine of 6 centimeters. So that means here where 0 is, there's the front cover, first signature, second signature, third signature, fourth signature, fifth signature, and then here where 6 centimeters is, there is the second part of the cover, meaning the back cover. So 6 centimeters is the width of our spine. And since these pages are DIN A5 in width, perhaps you use US letter size paper, then you have, you know, the half of US letter size. I don't know what that is in inch. Yes, I know it. 8.5 by 11 is the whole thing. That would mean inch. That would mean the half of 11 would then be 5.5, I think, what you have here in width with US letter size paper, if I'm not mistaken now. So what I do here is, and you can do that with US letter size paper, of course, as well. I see that this is approximately 15 centimeters, whatever that might be for US letter. And then I take either half of a centimeter or a centimeter more for my cover. Half of a centimeter is approximately a fourth of an inch. Yeah, so one of these little pieces here, these little squares, is I think that is not correct. A quarter of an inch. Yeah, I think that is correct, isn't it? And that is approximately the same like 0.5 centimeters, but only approximately. But what I'm trying to say is I try to measure here and see how much the cover shall be more than the width of the page. So I think 16 would be good because we have all of this lace here as well, and I don't want to have my cover too short. So 16 plus 16 is 32, obviously, plus 6 centimeters for the spine is 38. So that is what we need for the cover. So I'm checking if this is long enough, and I'm a really lucky girl. So this is, by the way, the only pen I have available here. So let's do this with this pen. And I make a little mark here and also here on the top, and then I will quickly run to my big paper trimmer to cut this off. Of course, you could also cut this with your scissors, but I want to have an accurate cut here. Okay, so this has the right size now, and this is some fabric I could find in my boxes. And I think that this, which is laying directly on the top here, could fit really well for this whole journal and could match really well to the colors of the signatures. If you've followed this series, then you know that I started with a really neutral color palette. That was the plan for this journal. And then it happened that some red and blue came into the game here. We have some red here from this sewing pattern and also in some other spots. The first point of adding red was this paper bag here, which I got in a Happy Mail. And I had that in my stash and I thought I want to use some paper bags in the journal, and then I thought, ooh, this is really gorgeous. And it's a special paper bag, as you can see. But the problem was that it had this red, and red is not a neutral color. And that made my thoughts go a little further, and I decided that I want to add some more red. And then I also had some other patterns also here on my digital paper, which is called embroidery paper. You can find this in my Etsy shop. The link is down below in the description box. This is like the main theme of the journal, embroidery. And also what I printed to the back, this is called Stitched. You can find that in my shop as well. The link is also down below in the description box. And with this theme of having an embroidery journal, and if you have followed the series, you know that I went into a little abstract interpretation of embroidery because I can't embroider. And you know, that was the idea behind this whole thing. Is it possible to make an embroidery journal without the skills of embroidery? Yeah, without having skills. And with that, and with searching for materials to follow this idea, I also found these patterns here, which were made for embroidery, and they have blue. So that was the way how red and blue came into the signatures as well. additionally to the neutral colors we have. And with that, I thought, why don't we use this Tim Holtz fabric, because it has red, it has blue, and it is neutral. So, you know, this could work. So let's see which portion of this we want to use. So obviously I want to have some of the red and some of the blue. So here are these gorgeous labels. Let's see, if we take this paper bag and put it here, we can imagine how big this would be and what would be shown in the inside of the journal, because this fabric shall go to the inside of the journal. We would then see this red label in the back, and in the front we would see this. And since this is my first signature, yeah, I think that makes sense. Here is no red, but I can live with that. This fits together really well. So I will take my paper scissors, because I don't have my fabric scissors on hand. Please don't do that. I do that only for you. I absolutely hate doing that. I would never do that without these circumstances of the move. Because, you know, fabric scissors are made for fabric and paper scissors are made for paper. But, yeah. So I want to have a torn edge on the top as well. So let me quickly do that. And I will tear this fabric a little bigger than the paper bag is, so that I have the possibility to have some frayed edges in the end. Ooh, if you don't like frayed edges, you could obviously, of course, also cut this and make a really straight edge. I mean, cutting instead of tearing it. If you have an iron, please iron this. I don't have my iron here, so I can't do it. So I will try to get this on here as flat as possible. To glue this, I'm going to use some bookbinder's glue and a tiny little bit of water. And I'm using the Craft Emotions bookbinder's glue. And when we have that, we can let this dry completely. And then I want to go to my sewing machine to sew around the whole thing here with a zigzag stitch, so that we already can get some interesting things from the sewing. And on the other hand, sewing around here gives me a better orientation later for what I want to do on the other side. So when I have sewing here, I can see where my paper bag ends, even from this side where I can't see the paper bag anymore. Yeah, does that make sense? When I sew around here, I get automatically the stitching here as well, and I then can see the frame of the paper bag from here, even if this will be coated with something else later. So I will let this dry, and then I will go to my sewing machine and sew around here. So here I'm back. So now I can exactly see where my paper bag is, since I have the zigzag sewing here. And I have sewn really accurately around here, so that this is like really, you know, I know what I have here from the other side. So then it is really helpful to measure where the spine has to be, or will be in the end. So we said 16 centimeters for the front cover, then 6 centimeters for the spine. 16 plus 6 is 22, obviously. So then this should be 16 as well. Double check. Yes. So I do this here as well. 16, 22, And then this should be 16 as well. Okay. Then we take a really professional ruler to make a line here. Since this is obviously going to become a soft cover, I want to give you a little thing to consider, or how can I say that? Some people like when the spine of the journal later on is round. So let me quickly try to demonstrate that. The pages will later on be here like so, and then the cover is going around here like this. And if you skip the following step, then your spine has this curve, obviously. And when you have your journal in the end like this, then this is always round. Some people like that, some people don't like that. I, as you can imagine from the sentence, I don't like that so much. Of course, it depends on the material you want to use for the outside of the cover. Obviously, this will change, and I want to glue something on here later. It depends a little bit on the material you have here, and perhaps you want to, let's say you want to make something like a patchwork cover or so, and you have different pieces of something that you want to puzzle together. Then it can make sense that this is round, because the material tells you that it has to be round. Do you know what I mean? With some materials, it's not possible to do what I do next. And then, of course, a round and curved spine is absolutely wonderful. But I like to check if I can sew along these lines here, this one and the other one, to get a more defined spine. Because I'm the kind of junk journaler who likes to have this book feeling in the end, even if I have a soft cover. I like to have this, this feeling of a real book. And a real book for me has a spine which you can see and feel. And that is why I do the following thing. I, as you could see, mark where the spine has to be. And now I go to my sewing machine again, and with a straight stitch, how is that setting in English? Running stitch, I go along here so that the material here has already a point, or actually a line where it can fold, so that this is like this rectangle, which then later on is the book cover. Do you know what I mean? So I will quickly do that, and then in a second you can see what I mean. So here I'm back. If you want to do this step, then try to follow your line really, really exactly. The more exactly this is, the more beautiful the journal in the end will look. I mean, the more harmonious and regular the cover will be in the end. This sewing along the spine here has not only the advantage that this... Ooh. Sorry, it's not so easy to show without the signatures. So let me quickly take these and put them in here so that you can see better what I mean. It has not only the advantage that the spine here is now not curved anymore, but it's, you know, flat, and we have like nearly 90-degree angles here and here, which I really like. So if you like that as well, then you could do this as well. But it also has the advantage that I can see where my signatures have to go later in the inside of the journal, because when I cover this up, then I can't see this anymore. So meaning if I put some fabric on here, then I can't see this anymore. And of course I would have to measure where the signatures go in the inside here again, and that is not so easy because of this frayed edge here. So a really accurate measuring would be a little bit difficult then. So this is really helpful, so that I then later on can take my template for the signatures and I can just place it here, and I can exactly see where the signatures and especially the holes for the signatures have to go later. And the other thing is a question: where do the threads for the binding go? And that is not so easy to answer. So imagine you have your template where to put the holes into the spine. That means later on the signatures will sit in here like this, and the thread of course goes through the signature and then through the spine. In this case, if we would leave this exactly like it is, that would mean that the thread for the binding would be shown here and you could see it here. In this case, that would be no problem because we will cover this up so that we can't see the thread anymore later. But how to decide where the thread goes? Because there are several different possibilities, of course. And sometimes I have the feeling that some people, especially when you are new to junk journaling, think that there are some kind of rules or something like that. But in my eyes, there are no rules except one rule. And this one rule is, how sturdy is this? Yeah, that is a thing where I think you should think about the materials that you have already here to then decide where the thread goes, because you have different possibilities. Imagine you would take this and poke the holes through here, then the thread would go through here and you would see the thread here. That could be a possibility. You could leave this exactly like it is. I would say this is sturdy enough to have a nice journal later, but have in mind that you then have the threads of the binding here, and if you don't want to see them, then you have to cover this up with something else. You could also, instead of sewing the signatures through this material and have the threads shown here, cover this up with another piece of fabric or paper or whatever you like, and then sew the signatures in and then have the thread on the outer layer. And that is exactly what I want to do now. And I have this cool fabric here, and this whole thing has another reason so that I do it like this, because I hope that is not too confusing, because I want to have sewing on this fabric as well. And this material is really thick. It's like an upholstery fabric or something like that. I found this in the trash here on the campsite, believe it or not. Of course, I put this into my washing machine after I found it, but I don't know exactly what this is. That's what I'm trying to say. But it's really thick, and I want to have sewing around the cover on this material. That means if I would, and that would be a possibility, of course, if I would sew in my signatures now and have this like so, then the thread would be shown here. I, of course, could take a piece of this, make a faux stitching around here, meaning stitch only through this fabric, and then glue it here to hide the threads from the binding. And then it would from the outside also look like it was sewn here, but I would have to glue it to the paper bag here, and I would have no possibility anymore to sew with my sewing machine to through all of these layers. And because of the fact that this fabric is so thick, I don't like that, because let me show you. When we take a piece of this, we can immediately see the problem. Let me quickly cut this and tear this into the right size. And the right size is, in this case, the same size like the Tim Holtz fabric is. And here you can already perhaps see the problem. If I would do a faux stitching around here, I mean, I could do that. I could take that to my sewing machine and do a zigzag stitching around here. Then also this would be somehow sealed so that it can't fray more. But the problem is, this is so thick, and with the sewing, the frame of this fabric would get thicker as well. And we already have the sewing here, which makes this a little thick as well. Imagine I would now take this with this sewing around and only glue that on here. I would have a really hard job to get this glued down really well. You need the right glue. Of course, with bookbinders glue, for example, or a textile glue, that would be no problem, but it's annoying and I don't like that. So I like it better when I can take this piece of fabric and sew through all of the layers of my cover to make sure that especially this frame here is attached really well and that I later on can't see this paper bag. If I would glue it here, it could happen that it, with the time, comes off and then you would have something like this and we could see the paper bag. If that doesn't bother you, then, you know, please just glue it. But I like to do it this way so that I can, what am I doing here? I need this first, so that I can sew around the whole thing. So I place this here. I make sure that all of these little pieces are gone so that I don't get any of these in between of the fabric and the paper bag. And now you can of course decide if you want to additionally glue this to the paper bag, or I like to take this and just sew it on because I want to have a really squishy thing in the end. With this journal, I've chosen a theme which is challenging for me. And the theme, as you perhaps know if you followed the series, is embroidery. And in this journal, there is no real embroidery, as you could see during this series. What is that? Is that now too small? And with this like abstract interpretation of embroidery, I also want to have something that fits to this interpretation on the cover. That means I want to have something like a cushion or so. That's also why I have chosen this fluffy fabric. And I want this that it makes these noises. Can you hear that? Later on as well. And if I would glue this to the paper bag, that would not happen, because then everything would be attached to each other and there would be probably only a little noise of the paper bag because I have no glue in the paper bag, meaning between the single layers of the paper bag. But that is not enough for me. I want to have this really like a cushion in the end. So that means I will take this now, double check if everything is in the right place, and then I take this to my sewing machine, and now I sew first from the inside because I have this zigzag stitching here, and with that I can exactly see where the paper bag is ending, which I can't see from this side. So here, if I would sew from here, I would have to guess where to sew, because with the tearing, this fabric is, of course, you know, not a real 100% correct rectangle, but the paper bag is a really accurate rectangle. That means I can sew along here, and then I can turn the whole thing to the other side and do some decorative stitching on the outside of the cover. So I will quickly do that, and I will also again sew along here and here, so that I get this spine piece to the outside of the cover as well. And these sewn lines, I want to see them on the outside as well. So here we go. As you can see, I went a little crazy and also irregular with my sewing machine. I really like that when, you know, it is well attached, but at the same time it looks irregular and not so clean. I mean, it's a junk journal, isn't it? So then we can take an awl or a needle or our fingernail tool and go in here to remove all of these threads here to get a really nice and frayed edge. In this case, that will make a really big mess on my table because of the fabric, this yellow fabric, but Did I say yellow? I mean, it's not really yellow, yellowish. But I think it's worth it because this is really fluffy. So I will take my awl and go all around here to remove these things that want to come out. And then we can sew in the signatures. And for that, I have already made myself a little template so that I know what I do. I will not show you my whole process of sewing the signatures into the journal in this video because that is not the point of the video. But I have several videos where I show how I get my signatures into a journal cover. There are some detailed videos about that, and I will link some of those below for you so that you can watch that if you have never done that and if you need instructions for binding the signatures into a cover. But of course, even if it's a different journal, you can see in those videos which are linked below, it's the same process. Yeah, I do nothing different, but I thought if you are a beginner and you have never done this, it's good to have some detailed information, and those videos provide exactly that. And if you have done this for several times and you are, you know, familiar with how to bind a journal, then this would be totally boring if I show it again. That's why I decided to not put it into this video, but why there are links linked below. So I will remove the rest of these little guys here, and then I will sew in the signatures, and then we will see again. Ta-da! This is always such a fantastic moment. Even if this is not finished yet, it's so wonderful to have this in my hands, because now, of course, we can open this journal for the first time and have this feeling of a real book in front of us. And for me, this point is really important because now I can see for the first time how, or not see, but feel how it feels, you know, to flip through this journal without having this problem that everything is loose and flying around on my table. So I really, really enjoy this moment of this process of making this journal. And of course, you could now leave this exactly like it is here and decide later what to put here, or perhaps you don't want to put something here at all. Yeah, you could also leave this plain. And that is really great because you can take this now and work in the journal. You have a real book in front of you, and you have, in my eyes, a better feeling for like the finishing touches, or for, yeah, let's say you want to embellish the journal further. Then you can better see what to put where so that everything is harmonious in the end. Even if you could leave this, I would recommend to put something over here, especially if you have such a like diva fabric like I have here. This fabric is really fluffy. And one thing, if you have never made a journal and if you consider yourself a beginner, don't take such a fabric for the first journal, because this is a little tricky, and this kind of fabric requires a little experience with binding the signatures into the cover. I think when you have never, if you have never done something like this and you have never bound a journal, you have other things in your mind than struggling with such a fabric. Yeah, but that's just a little like tip for your nerves. Yeah, do you know what I mean? So that your nerves don't get wrecked. Since this is really fluffy, the thread has to go into the fluff to this like base material of the cover. Where is the rest? Where can I show you that? Look, I try to show you that a little closer. Can you see these little fibers here? they are really long, and that means that you have to pull the thread that it goes to the base material, and that is this stuff here. Of course, this here is on this side as well, but you can't see it because of the fluff. And that this fact that this is so high, I mean, when I go over this with my finger, you can see it moves, and I can feel that there's a distance between my finger and this base material. And that makes that you need to pull the thread so that it goes really down to the fabric. And with that, of course, there's a little danger that this could get loose with time, because you want to work in the journal, you want to flip through the journal, and then it could happen that the threads get loose. Even with like a normal flat fabric, that could happen. So even if I like when you can see the threads on the outside, there are many people who leave them visible, and I really enjoy seeing that. But even if I enjoy it, I would recommend to cover this up to make the journal and the spine and this thread more sturdy and more durable. And for that, I want to take another piece of this fabric, because, you know, I mean, that's obvious, it fits to the rest. And I want, ooh, look, this is also a great combination. And I want to see, is this, oh, this is long enough. So let's take this and let's make a piece which is approximately the width of the spine. And I say approximately because this doesn't have to be exactly the width. But what I want to make sure is that I cover up all of my threads here. So it can't be too narrow. It has to be wide enough to cover everything up. And what I don't want is that the fabric goes over these edges here. So I want to have it here only on the spine to make sure that this is still really flexible. If you glue too much, like fabric or lace or whatever, over here, then it can happen that this gets stiff and you can't open the journal so well anymore. So let's take this, remove these loose threads. Here's the top. And even if I, how to manage that so that you can see it. Normally I would lay it just to my table, or I would put it in between of my knees to have a good feeling for where to glue this. So this shall go on here like this. Let's see, double check this fits. So then let's take some bookbinders glue or textile glue and let's put that on here and glue that down. And this little trick makes that these threads, well, basically it's only one thread which is going up and down like zigzag. This thread then gets like one with the piece of fabric I will glue on here and the fabric of the cover. Now we have this, we can let this dry. I will fray these edges here later on way more. You can see this is longer than the cover is, but I want to have a little fluff here as well. I don't do that now to make sure that the glue can dry really well. But I want to put something on here, some more decoration. And I have some things we have made during this series. This is some kind of a napkin or so. I've dyed this with rust, water and coffee. The same, oh, I really have problems to grab these things. The same I did with this little thing here and this piece. And I also have this bigger piece, but I think this is, even if I liked this in the beginning very much, I have the feeling that this is now too rough somehow. Normally, I don't like diagonal things somehow, especially when there's, for example, a card or so, and there's a quote on a diagonal. I can freak out when I see that. That's really a, how do you say that in English? Like a pet peeve. I don't like that. But junk journaling is experimenting. Barbara, have you heard it? So I tried to play around with this diagonal we already have here, and I tried to place this along here, but then we have this weird shape here that looks totally stupid. How to add the white without covering too much of the rest. Let's make a little operation. This here goes behind this now, of course, but it looks weird when the petals of the flower here on the lace are behind the white lace. So why don't I cut in here so that I then can take these and put them over this white thing, just like this. Haha, look! Problem solved. Okay, that is really good. But do we like that we see this here through the white here, or shall I cut this off in the shape of the white? I mean, this edge of the white lace. This shape is still really weird, isn't it? Oh, do I have do I have another piece of this pattern? No. Oh, because I'm just thinking, what will happen if I take, this is still too big, but I will just put it here so that I don't have to cut it for nothing. What if it was like this? Oh yes. Aha. Okay. That is really confusing for the eye, and that is perfect. That is really perfect. I like that. But then we can't see this edge anymore. I need a coffee. I need a coffee to think about this for a few moments. Step back from the project if you don't know what to do, they say. Yeah, I did that, and now I came back and I know that this is not going to happen. But the problem is, I don't know what is going to happen. But somehow I like this idea of using something diagonal. And I just thought I want to see more of this. That would make a nice spine as well. Please believe me, you can't see it at the moment. I'm just thinking, since I have cut into this, why don't we take this, either only the flower or this whole piece. Oh, okay. We won't see this diagonal anymore, but I think this would be too much. Yeah, we can't cover the white. So we have to I'm just trying to decide where this flower would look the best. I think it has to be here on the outer part of this. Oh my goodness. That looks somehow really elegant, doesn't it? But I'm just thinking, can I balance this white a little better by adding more white here? That's not so bad, but it's the wrong shape, I guess. Yeah, I think that this is the solution. Okay, wow, that was fast. So what I'm going to do next is I take a photo of this so that I can't change the order here anymore and that I can remember how this was. And then I will go to my sewing machine and I will sew these layers on. Of course, if you don't have a sewing machine, you could also use some glue to attach these pieces. So here I'm back. This is all on here now, and as you can see, I've made some tiny changes. To be honest, here's also some glue involved just to make my life of sewing a little easier. But I mean, that's just to hold everything in place. But I'm really proud that I could attach this with just a little bit of sewing and not too much. And in my next video, I would like to show you a flip through of this journal, even if this is not finished yet. That sounds a bit weird, but there is an idea behind that. On the one hand, I would like to show you this stage of the journal because this is the stage I would have if I would use this journal for myself and work in the journal. There are often people who ask me what to do with a junk journal and how do you work in your junk journal. For me and for this channel, it's often a little difficult to show that because I sell my journals. Yeah, and when I make a journal, then in the most cases, it's way more embellished than this. There's still space for the new owner to be creative, but it's more embellished than this is. And if I use a journal for myself and make some personal journaling, then you won't see it because it's a personal journal. Yeah, but this stage of the project is probably something that you also have after watching this series. And there's another thing. Because I thought when I make this journal and, you know, I said I sell my journals. But when I have my journal finished and it goes into my shop, then I don't have any chance anymore to do something in the journal. And that is always a little bit weird because, as I told you a few minutes ago, this stage of the journal is really exciting. And this is so inspiring and motivating to do something in the journal that I want to do that as well. Do you know what I mean? I want to take the chance to work in this journal. And because of my situation with the move at the moment, it is really hard for me to make videos and to finish this series. So I thought, I mean, you know, you could craft along with this series, and if you have followed the series, you have now a journal like this on your desk. So that's a finished journal. So for me, this is somehow not a break of the series, but this is like the first end of the series, and then there will come a second end of the series. Do you know what I mean? Perhaps in a few minutes. So my idea is, if you have followed the series, you have something like this, like a journal in your hands, and you can use this journal to work in it. So that means this part of the series is finished and it's a complete project, what you have on your desk now. But since I want to work in this journal, I thought, how can I make the best from this whole situation with my move and with the fact that all of my craft supplies are in boxes at the moment. So I thought, why don't we make a little break here? And you can suggest what I shall create in this journal in the future videos. So that means I will show you a flip through in the next video, and below the next video, please not below this video, yeah? Please keep your suggestions to the next video so that I have a better overview and don't get confused. I will show you a flip through so that you can see the single pages and the single spots where I can perhaps create something. And then you can make suggestions what you want to see me creating in this journal. And you can do those suggestions, you can leave those suggestions in the comments below the next video. What do you think about that? Of course, it will take a few days or perhaps weeks after your suggestions, because I have to do that, yeah? And in this moment, I am still in between of my boxes. So that means when you see this, I don't know how far my move has come. So I record this in what month do we have, Louise? It's the middle of May for me. So you will see this in June, but I don't have an idea what is going to happen in my life in June. And I have no idea how I can manage this whole thing with my schedule. But you can be sure when you saw this flip through, the flip through of this, then you can leave a suggestion what you want me to create in this. In the next video, I will give you some more detailed information about what you can suggest. And then I will read the comments, pick out what I think is good and what I can manage. Then I will record the videos, and then later on in the year, you will see those videos and you will see this journal again, and you will see, yeah, like a second part of this series with this journal. Does that make sense? Hopefully. So I hope that that is a great idea for you as well. I'm really looking forward to do that. And it feels also more that, it feels that you are here with me. Do you know what I mean? Normally I sit here and I decide by myself and alone what to do here and what I like and what not and what I want to do. And I want to have something where you can be a little bit more involved into my process as well. So that's also a reason for this idea. So hopefully you like that. And of course, I'm hoping that we will see the next time and that you are looking forward to the flip through of this as well. So have a very great and creative day. See you.